for the future? Do you have any plans to do something with movies or films yourself?
I'd love to. You know, listen, I've never made any secret of the fact that my ambition would be to work closely with a director on a feature film. And one of the things I've been hearing my whole life really is, you know, oh, your music's so cinematic, it's so suited to film. But the frustration is I've never really been invited to work on a movie yet.
How come, do you think?
Well, I just don't think I'm visible enough in the mainstream. I think because ultimately my music is still quite underground. I don't know how much, you know, directors and producers actually look to underground music. They tend to stick with, you know, artists that are in the mainstream because they know them and they're accessible. And also I think another problem is these days that most movies don't necessarily have a soundtrack in the traditional sense where someone's been commissioned to score a soundtrack. A lot of movie soundtracks these days are like glorified compilations. Like, oh, we'll license an REM track and we'll license, you know, an old Eagles track, and so the album just becomes this kind of compilation. Whereas I love the idea of you know, a director and a musician working very closely on a movie. And, you know, it has happened. The soundtrack that Air did for Virgin Suicides, the soundtrack that Trent Reznor recently did for The Social Network. Those for me are great examples of when a director and a musician are working very closely together on creating a whole kind of musical identity for a movie, and I would love to do that. I'd love to do that for the right movie, of course.
Yeah. Well, before we have to stop, I have some, a couple of short questions as well. There are some projects running pretty simultaneously, like Porcupine Tree, Blackfield, your solo project. Does that ever conflict with each other in any way?
In terms of time, yeah, because I haven't got enough time to do everything I would like to do. I mean, I would love to be, you know, making a Porcupine Tree record, a new Porcupine Tree record right now, but I'm not. Firstly, I'm promoting this record, then I'm going to go do some shows with this record. So there is a conflict in terms of time. There isn't really there's not a musical conflict because I think they all have a very distinctive identity of their own. They all have a very distinctive personality of their own. Of course, you know, you can listen to my solo record and say, well, that could have been on a Porcupine Tree record, or you can listen to a Blackfield song and say that could have been on a Porcupine Tree record, or vice versa. Of course, there is a crossover, but I think that tends to be like individual songs. Overall, I think each project is very distinctive. So when I'm writing for my solo albums, I'm writing music that I wouldn't write for Porcupine Tree, and vice versa. I have an idea about the kind of music that Porcupine Tree should play, or that the other guys in the band will enjoy playing, will be committed to playing. The thing about doing the solo record was it's kind of liberating in a way that I don't have to think about that at all. I can just write very intuitively. And I think on this record I've done things that I have never done before, that I've always wanted to do before, because I didn't have to consider other people, other musicians, you know. I didn't have to think, oh, you know what, Gavin's not going to like that, or Richard's not going to enjoy that keyboard. But I mean, I do kind of think that way when I'm writing Porcupine Tree, so I'm writing for other musicians. So this time I'm writing just purely, again, for myself. So that conflict so far hasn't really come along, no.
Okay. You're also going to release an album with Mikael Akerfeldt.
Yes, eventually, yeah.
Storm Corrosion. What can you already tell us about it?
It's all written and it's all demoed, and we are really excited about it, because again, it's like something else that neither of us have done with our own projects. It's mostly him playing guitar, it's mostly me playing keyboards and arranging the music. But there's a lot of orchestration on the record as well, orchestra and live instrumentation. It's, I guess you'd call it quite a mellow album, but it's also very strange and quite disturbing as well.
Why did you want to do this together?
Because we both have a very, well, firstly we're very good friends and we've been talking about doing this for years, but we also have certain things that we both like musically that we don't know anyone else that likes.
Do you have an example?
Scott Walker. Do you know Scott Walker?
No.
Scott Walker is this singer that's been around since the 60s who makes an album once every 10 years. And his last few albums, he's only made one in the 80s, one in the 90s, and one in the last 10 years, are utterly bizarre, almost like theatre. The way the music unfolds is almost theatrical. They don't follow the rules in any way at all. And he uses a lot of orchestration. He uses a lot of discord. Like he'll get an orchestra to play ugly chords, but then sing beautiful melodies over the top. And we're both fascinated by this, so we've kind of absorbed a lot of that into this project too. But it also has a lot of the things that people will recognise from Opeth and from my stuff too. Yeah.
Okay. Well, one more question, if you can
go
answer
ahead.
this one very fast.
All right.
Then, Porcupine Tree. Are there already plans for a new album, or is there something that's going to happen within now and a couple of?
I think next year there'll be a new record. Yeah, we'll probably get together January and right through the spring and record in the spring. And yeah, I think probably about this time next year I would start looking for a new record. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Okay, my pleasure.
Good luck.
Nice to meet you guys. Thanks.